cloud. So welcome everyone. We are going to begin our study. And this morning we are looking at Parashat Vayetzei. And we're going to be focusing on really one of the most powerful images in the book of Genesis, which is the Jacob's ladder, and looking at it at many different angles. And what did the ladder mean? What was this ladder all about? It really is somehow, and it's a little bit difficult to get to really fully understand what it is. Maybe that's just the nature of dreams. Dreams are hard to fully comprehend as to what their imagery fully is about. But this is a very important moment. This is maybe the equivalent. I mean, Jacob has two very important moments. He has this moment, and he has a moment of wrestling with the angel that somehow feel like a parallel to each other. But they're the equivalent maybe of Abraham's Lech Lecha, right? They're the equivalent of when God tells Abraham, go to yourself, or go out of your father's home, go explore. This is Jacob's moment of encountering God in his own term, right? This is the first time we really have Jacob by himself. The rest of the time he's with Esau, he's stealing the blessing, he's growing up, he's in his mother's stomach. So this is Jacob coming into his own in a certain kind of way. And it's Jacob having his first experience that places him in the lineage. And it's this dream of Jacob's ladder, which is evocative and powerful and has been interpreted in many different interesting ways. And still somehow has a foundational place in our vision of what a Jewish spiritual life is. I mean, it's been used a lot in Kabbalistic ideas and imagery. And we'll see this. I mean, it's been interpreted in many different ways, but right, the word sulam in Hebrew is the gematria, the numerical equivalent to Sinai. So what Sinai is for the Jew, it's 130. So what Sinai is to the Jewish people, Jacob's ladder maybe is to individual Jews, somehow like the place of experience of meeting God. But anyway, all very interesting. This is a really foundational moment, and it's mysterious. It's hard to really know what it was saying, but clearly has a very powerful effect on Jacob. As we know, what Jacob has to go through after this is not pashut. It's not easy, right? He has to get fooled a few times, and he has to marry the wrong sister, and then work for the other sister, and contend with an uncle, a father-in-law, an uncle who's not the most easy to work with, and be far away from home. So this is the defining moment as he too is leaving home, right? God says to Abraham, go out of your father's house. Jacob didn't really have much of a choice, but he's also leaving his father's house at this moment, right? He's making his own path in the world. So Alan, would you mind reading for us, beginning? Sure.
Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. He came upon a certain place and stopped there for the night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. He had a dream. A stairway was set on the ground, and its top reached to the sky, and messengers of God were going up and down on it. And standing beside him was Adonai, who said, I am Adonai, the God of your father Abraham's house, and the God of Isaac's house. The ground on which you are lying, I will assign to you and to your offspring. Your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and your descendants. Remember, I am with you, I will protect you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely Adonai is present in this place, and I did not know it. Shaken, he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven. Early in the morning, Jacob took the stone he had put under his head and set up a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. He named that site Bethel, but previously the name of the city had been Luz. Jacob made a vow, saying, if God remains with me, protecting me on this journey that I am making, and giving me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and I return safe to my father's house, Adonai shall be my God. And this stone which I have set up as a pillar shall be God's abode. And of all that you give me, I will set aside a tithe for you.
Perfect. Thank you. So any initial impressions? How did Jacob feel about this dream?
Well, I have one question before we
Sure.
talk about the dream, and that is, he's gone off on his own, correct?
He's left. Well, we can read the very end of what happened before. I think it's worth it, because it sets up. Here we go. Let's see. Okay. Somebody else read for us, beginning verse 41. We might as well read the end of the last Parsha.
Now Esau harbored a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing which his father had given him. And Esau said to himself, but let the mourning period of my father come, and I will kill my brother Jacob. When the words of her older son Esau were reported to Rebekah, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you. Now listen, my son, listen to me. Flee at once to Haran, to my brother Laban. Stay with him a while until your brother's fury subsides, until your brother's anger against you subsides 2 times, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will fetch you from there. Let me not lose you both in one day. Rebekah said to Isaac, I am disgusted with my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries a Hittite woman like these from among the native women, what good will life be to me? So Isaac sent for Jacob and blessed him, which is interesting. He instructed him, saying, you shall not take a wife from among the Canaanite women. Up, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take a wife there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May El Shaddai bless you, make you fertile and numerous, so that you become an assembly of peoples. May you and your offspring be granted the blessing of Abraham, that you may possess the land where you are sojourning, which God assigned to Abraham. Then Isaac sent Jacob off, and he went to Padan Aram, to Laban, the son of Bethuel the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, the mother of Jacob and Esau. When Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him off to Padan Aram to take a wife from there, charging him as he blessed him, you shall not take a wife from among the Canaanite women, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and gone to Padan Aram, Esau realized that the Canaanite women, wasn't he already married to a Canaanite woman or two
He
of them?
was.
Yeah,
Mhm.
to 2 of them, I
Sure.
think.
Mhm.
Esau realized that the Canaanite women displeased his father Isaac. So Esau went to Ishmael, who is his great uncle.
Mhm. No, his
And
uncle.
it is his uncle. Okay. And
His
took to
uncle.
wife, in addition to the wives he had, Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, sister of Nebaioth.
Yeah. And then we have Interesting, right? I mean,
Lot
it
going on
appears as though Rebecca is a little bit fooling her own husband again, doesn't it? By she's really trying to save her son, but she comes up with this whole explanation about the Canaanite women as well to convince him to send Jacob away.
But wasn't Isaac was also commanded not to take a wife from the Canaanite women, but in that case, Abraham told Isaac, sit your butt down here, do not leave the land, and
Yes.
sent a servant, right? Sent a servant to go get Rebecca and brought Rebecca back. This is way different. This is way different. He's already pissed off his father. He's terrified his mother, and he's pissed off his brother, right? And so his mother is terrified and sends him off the land, right? Sends him, they're in Beersheba, I think, and sends him all the way up to where Abraham's people are, right? Where Laban is. So there's so much going on here. I mean, Rebecca has fooled her husband, right? Just as Laban is about to fool his nephew, his great nephew. And there's just so much trickery going on here around Rebecca and Laban. Is Jacob really a trickster, or is he the pawn in all of this trickery?
Interesting.
It's interesting, but the fact that Jacob is actually blessed, he steals the blessing, then he's blessed again, and then he's sent away with these blessings, right? And then has this protection, this protective dream from the Lord. I'm still trying to sort it all out.
Well, how does Jacob feel? His mother's put some good old guilt on him too, right? She said to him, let not both of us die in one, I don't want to lose both my sons. So he's leaving. What's his state of mind as he's leaving? His father's giving him a blessing, but he knows that he's conspired with his mother against his father and his brother, and his mother is continuing to push him in a certain direction.
Scheming.
But at the same time, he's terrified of Esau. Esau said he wants to kill him. He feels blessed by his father. It's an uncomfortable situation for Jacob to be in. Alan, what do you think? Since you asked the question of how Jacob is.
Well, my question was around, was Jacob going alone through this wilderness, or was he there with some servants? Because if he was sent out into the wilderness, and there he is by himself, he tries to find a safe place to spend the night, and he's alone, and I could imagine that his dreams or nightmares are around, is he going to survive the night? Is he going to get eaten by some animal? Whatever. And he, I guess, fortunately had a very positive dream that everything was going to be okay. But then I was also a little confused where it said that he stopped, the place where he stopped, he set up an altar, but it seemed to indicate, I think it said that the place that he stopped was a city named Luz that he gave a new name to. And I'm thinking, oh, he's in the middle of the desert, but maybe he's in a city, and which is a little confusing to me. It takes away from the power of wandering around the wilderness and being out there all alone if he wasn't really out there all alone.
What does loose mean in Hebrew? Does loose have a meaning in Hebrew?
I can't think of any meaning for lose.
And it's just a name.
It means something in Spanish. It means
Yeah,
light.
it's light.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this whole thing, he named that site Bethel, but previously the name of the city had been Luz, is a very mysterious and strange line that biblical scholars pick up on to indicate a problem, to indicate that this text is working within a context rather than, the way biblical scholars interpret it. They're always looking for clues that what context and where does this text come from, right? Where was it written, so to speak? So when this is a temporal problem because he named that site Bethel, but previously the name of the city had been Luz. And so it's kind of like if you're listening to a story being told orally, and you hear that line, that helps to situate, okay, I thought this was Luz or was a Bethel, but it takes away from the claim that the text is a divine text, according to the scholars. I had a whole long discussion about this. I don't quite remember, but Phil, if you have Alter, what does he say about that Bethel and Luz? Does he have anything to say? I can't remember the detail. You're on mute, by the way.
Sorry, chapter 28, right?
Verse 19.
Verse 19, right? I'm back and forth. I wasn't okay. Though the name of the town before had been Luz, in fact, he writes, there is no indication of any town in the story, although Luz Bethel would have been familiar to Israelite audiences as a town and cultic center. Perhaps Jacob's vision is assumed to occur in the open in the vicinity of Bethel. So he's puzzled about the.
Okay,
That's all.
so different. Not what I expect, but that's fine. Anyway, but I think what he's picking up is what Alan was asking too, which is the plain view of a text is that he's in the wilderness and he's just in the vicinity. He doesn't seem to be in a city. If not, he wouldn't be sleeping with some rocks under his head. There's no indication of anybody around him or anything. So I think you can keep that image of him being in the wilderness. You don't have to take that away. Anybody else? What is we've entered into his mind. He is fearsome. He is fleeing away his family, and Jacob has this dream of the ladder. What is the dream telling him? If you had that dream? What would the dream be telling you?
Do you know, Maimonides has a large comment on this,
Sure.
the Guide for the Perplexed, under his section where he's talking about 4 is a wonderful number. And he claims that, and he quotes some rabbinic texts for this. He says, each rung of the ladder,
For an empire, yeah.
each rung of the ladder has 4 angels on it, 2 angels ascending and 2 angels descending, each angel being 1/3 of the world. So in fact, the width of the ladder is 4/3 of the world. So I get out of that the ladder is a spiral ladder. Okay, so there's a twist to the ladder because of the way it's being described, at least the way the rabbis described it, where that there were 4 angels and each angel is 1/3 of the world. Anyway, very interesting to have that particular dream given. And the other thing too is that the stone that he puts his head on is one of the names of God. Eben is one of they call God the rock, etc. So the stone is the name of God. So it means to me that if you have a ladder and you get a spiral staircase cooking, you should ascend it quickly. And maybe you get through the gate before it closes, and you'll have some sort of divine experience.
Very nice.
I have
Well,
a
we'll get to a whole description in our commentaries of Maimonides and the different Kabbalistic interpretations.
So David, are you saying that if it's a spiral and it's going up and down at the same time, wouldn't that be a double spiral?
Maimonides claim he quotes in this section of the guide. He quotes a rabbinic text that says that there are 4 angels on each rung of the ladder. There are two angels going up and two angels going down. Now, whether they're two going up and two going down like this, or up, down, you can think about, and probably thinking about that is a good exercise to do something to you. Anyway, this is not my idea. This is coming from rabbinic text quoted by Maimonides in his section where he's talking about the number 4.
So we're going to get now to all those rabbinic texts, into Maimonides and everything. I think it's very rich and interesting. And would you imagine it as a spiral or as an escalator in a mall with some going down and some going up? I think.
Yeah, but it has to have a twist.
Is very rich.
A double helix. It's a double helix, what you're describing.
Of course
It's DNA. It's DNA. It's the double helix.
Well,
Okay.
or it's the spiral galaxy that we're sitting in, which is the Milky Way, which is the same shape.
All right, let's continue on. Let's go ahead.
I was going to say it's both cosmic and on the molecular level as well.
Right.
But everything so above, so below, or so below, so above. There's a mirror.
Hermetic doctrine that says that. Yeah.
All right. So here we go. Rashi, Vayivga b'makom. We're going to get to how rich. Why one of the reasons this story is so powerful is because of the symbolism and the way the language is constructed. And he lighted upon the place. Scripture does not mention which place; it just says the place. But by writing b'makom, the place, it refers to the place mentioned already in another place, Mount Moriah, of which it is stated. This is during the binding of Isaac, and he saw the place, hamakom, afar off. So this is, first of all, this is a rich rabbinic tradition that somehow what does he see? He's seeing Mount Moriah. Where's Mount Moriah? That's where Isaac was almost sacrificed, and it's the place where the ancient temple will be built. So we're starting to build up the powerful imagery of where we are and what's going on here. And he lighted, right? He came upon. Also, the word makom in Hebrew is one of God's names, right? One of God's names is Sur, rock, or Evan too. But here we have makom, which is one of God, the place, right? So the place is one of God's names in rabbinic literature, at least, maybe if not. But there is something mysterious about this. And he lighted. And he reached to Jericho, and he reached to the Beshef. Our rabbis explained in the sense of praying, just as Jeremiah, neither make intercession to me. Thus we may learn that Jacob originated the custom of evening prayer. So I've mentioned this a million times from the Bima, but this is where Jacob creates the Mari prayer. This isn't from the Talmud. This is how there's a kind of conflating of all kinds of different thoughts, but this word to light upon a place, somehow that energy of coming upon in the evening time is considered to be the energy that created the evening prayer. So Jacob is not just coming upon a place, but he's also in a moment of openness, of prayer, of opening his heart. There's all kinds of, he's not just anywhere. He's in the wilderness, but he's somehow seeing Mount Moriah. His eyes are just the way Abraham wandered for 3 days with the commandment to sacrifice his son, and suddenly his eyes were open and he saw Mount Moriah from afar. This is the same kind of movement of Jacob coming to this place. So we're building a lot of intensity here into the narrative. Would somebody read the Orach Chaim for us?
The reason the Torah mentioned that the sun had set is simply that Jacob would have continued on his way in order to get closer to his eventual destination, had it not been for the fact that nightfall required him to make camp. Bereshit Rabbah explains that the definite article under the letter Chav, the word
In a place. Yeah.
Makom, is an allusion to the site being Mount Moriah, the mountain destined for prayer and the eventual site of the Holy Temple. they base this on Genesis, where Abraham is reported as having recognized that site as the place where he was to offer up his son Isaac as a total offering to God. This is, of course, a homiletical approach. We naturally accept the words of our sage as absolutely true insights, and they do not contradict our own explanation at all. Rashi has already explained that Mount Moriah has been transplanted for the occasion, so that
Okay.
Jacob could offer up his prayer at that holy site.
I don't
Or
believe.
yeah. Well, thanks, Charles. We're entering the world of Midrash, but we're entering a powerful world, right? Where Jacob is suddenly transported to Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah is coming to him.
Yeah.
Where it's everything is conflating. We're a cosmic happening, which is kind of a rabbi's way of saying this is an important moment too. Okay, Phil, would you read for us Ibn Ezra, please? You're on mute, by the way.
Thank you. And by the way, that ladder,
Yes.
I think that's the, Alter says this, I think that's the only place in the whole Tanakh where that word appears.
Sulam.
And suggests that it's a ramp, as in a Mesopotamian zuggurat, so you can see terraces on it. Sort of.
That's
More-
four lines of spiral, though. Four arms in the ziggurat.
Or more like an escalator.
Yeah, okay. Ibn Ezra, sorry for my indulgence with myself. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth. Those who say that the ladder seen by Jacob referred to a statue, rearranging the letters of Sulam, ladder, to give us Semel, a statue. According to the Midrash, God showed Jacob the statue that Nebuchadnezzar would erect, and the statue that King Manasseh would erect and place in the temple, compare Breshit Rabbah, or that it refers to Sinai because it is numerically equivalent to it. Both Sulam and Sinai are numerically equivalent to 130. According to this interpretation, it was prophetically shown that Jacob's descendants would receive the Torah at Sinai, compare Breshit Rabbah. Are indulging in Midrash. But Rabbi Solomon ibn Gabirol, the Spaniard, says that Jacob's ladder alludes to man's heavenly soul, and that the angels of God signify thoughts of wisdom, explains the dream of the ladder to mean that Jacob's prayers ascended the heavens via the ladder, and in response to his supplications, salvation was sent down to him. These commentators have apparently not studied a sarcastic barb. So somebody is commenting. Somebody's
yeah,
is that in the? Oh, that's an editor of the Ibn Ezra text. Is that
of the Ibn Ezra text? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe. Oh, okay. That's why it's in it. Now I understand the
italics. That's
italics in the previous place too. Sorry for my bad intonation on it. It's definitely a different language, a different comment. A sarcastic barb. The scholars with whom Ibn Ezra takes issue obviously did study the prophets. So here he says, these commentators apparently not studied the prophecies of Zechariah, back to the main text, Amos and Jeremiah. The point is, says the commentator, that on the comment, the meta, that the prophets spoke in parables. The way to interpret Jacob's dream is to view it as a parable. It teaches that nothing is hidden from God, and that what happens below is contingent on the decree from above. There is thus, as it were, a ladder linking heaven and earth by which angels ascend to inform God what they have seen on earth after going over it. Scripture also states that other angels come down to fulfill God's commands. The imagery presented is that of a king and his servants.
Okay, so this rabbi he mentions was a Karaite, and this one of the reasons he disparages him. But I don't think we can get into it's very complex here. I don't quite understand how what they're doing is not a parable, but what he's doing is a parable also. But what I find interesting is is his. What I find interesting is his. You know, Ibn Ezra he wants to bring what the simple meaning, right? Ibn Ezra he's a rational thinker, and he's trying to bring the simple meaning. And I find his interpretation is kind of really beautiful in a certain way. What ladder is, you know, it's just, you know, nothing is hidden from God. What are angels? Angels are messengers, and they're letting God know what's happening, and God is present. You know, that God is present in your life. Is that the simple meaning of a dream? Jacob saw a heavenly ladder and angels going up and down, and God at the top, and it just gave him a sense of comfort. God is present. God is seeing everything. There's angels kind of relaying messages up and down, and you don't have to worry. How does that appeal to everybody as an interpretation of a dream?
I find it puzzling from the point of view, and I don't know if this was Ibn Ezra's point of view, that God knows everything, because here he is dependent on staff, angel, to go down and get the word and bring up the memo so he can review it and decide what to do next. But if you accept that God gets information however he gets it, and you don't take him as abstractly omniscient in some way, then it's then it works out for him.
Well, maybe it's a parable. This is Jacob could not understand. This is just teaching Jacob that way. It's not literal, right? Ibn Ezra is not saying this is literally what's happening, but it's giving a message to Jacob about God knowing everything. So it's, in essence, it's not showing Jacob this is a truth. It's saying, it's giving Jacob a message about God being present in his life. And I mean, Jacob's obviously feeling very alone at this moment, and like, well, is God present in this moment for me? And God is showing him in this way that perhaps Jacob could understand best. Maybe it's not referring to a metaphysical truth.
But it's more than an interpretation. It can. I take these things as method. This is methodology in order to be able personally to reach something divine. So the ladder to me is you look for it inside yourself, and you look for this fourfold, 2 angels going up, 2 angels going down, I think in a spiral fashion. And you see if that works for you in the sense that it brings you closer to some kind of inner illumination. Personally, that's the way I take all of these things. These are sort of clues for this process. And they're given in detail for us, the reader, many, many years later, to use those clues on ourselves.
And I think the power of a dream is also, a dream works on so many levels that it's. So let's read the next one, because now we're going to get to a little bit more of those kinds of interpretations. Someone read for us Ramban. Nachmanides, who himself is, in the first wave of what we would call Kabbalists. Okay, Ramban. Someone read for us Ramban.
And behold, the ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. In a prophetic dream, he shows Jacob that whatever is done on earth is effected by means of the angels, and everything is by decree given to them by the Supreme One. The angels of God, whom the Eternal has sent to walk to and fro through the earth, Zechariah, would not do anything minor or major until they returned to present themselves before the Master of the whole earth, saying before him, we have traversed the earth, and behold, it dwells in peace, or it's steeped in war and blood. And he commands them to return, to descend to the earth and fulfill his charge. And he further showed him that he, blessed be he, stands above the ladder, and promises Jacob with supreme assurance to inform him that he will not be under the power of the angel, but he will be God's portion. And it'll be with him always. And as he said, behold, I am with thee, and I will keep thee wherever thou goest. For his excellence is superior to that of other righteous ones, of whom it is said, for he will give his angels charge over thee and keep thee in all his ways. Psalms. And in the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer the Great, this vision was akin to the one seen by Abraham at the time of the covenant between the parts. This is between.
That's a very mysterious vision that Abraham has, and we can go to it afterwards. It's a beautiful vision. Okay.
He shows Jacob the dominion of the four kingdoms. The four kingdoms represent the great world powers seen in a vision by Daniel, who in succession will subject Israel under such time when Israel's final and complete deliverance will be effected by the Messiah. Power of the fourth kingdom, that of Rome, is still in sway. See Ramban further at the beginning of Seder Vayetzei. Jacob, like Abraham, was thus shown the events that will happen to his descendants during all the generations of their exiles, their ascent and descent. Is the meaning of the angels of God mentioned here, just as is said in the vision of Daniel, the prince of the kingdom of Greece and the prince of the kingdom of Persia. Similarly, the angels mentioned in the verse before us are to be understood as the representatives of the various nations. And he promised him that he, exalted be he, will be with him wherever he goes among the nations, and will guard him and rescue him for them. Thus the rabbis have said, the Holy One, blessed be he, showed him the four kingdoms, their dominion and their destruction, showed him the prince of the kingdoms of Babylon ascending 70 rungs, symbolic of the 70 years of the symbolic exile, then descending the ladder. He showed them the price of the kingdom of Media, ascending 180 rungs. See my Hebrew commentary. The number of rungs represent the amount of years that these kingdoms held sway over Israel, and then descending. And he showed him the prince of the kingdom of Edom ascending and not coming down. Ascending and not coming down. That's interesting. Jacob then said to the prince of Edom, yet thou shalt be brought down to the nether world. Isaiah, the Holy One, blessed be he, said to the prince of Edom, though thou make thy nest as high as the eagles, etc.
So two interesting ideas that come out of this, right? This is one of them. The first is the idea that he showed Jacob, my angels are just like my little messengers, but you're above them. You're going to be greater than the angels. You're going to have the power of a human being, which is very interesting. But an essential rabbinic idea, right? The angels are unable to grow. They just are fixed. But human beings have the ability to grow. And an important Kabbalistic idea. But then this other idea, which is an important Midrashic idea, which is interesting that what are the angels ascending and descending? The rungs, it's symbolic. There are four rungs, right? As David, you're saying, the number four. But of the four kingdoms,
there are four angels on each rung. They're not four rungs. Four angels on each rung. The number of rungs undetermined.
So the number of rungs. So anyway, different interpretations of it. But the four kingdoms, and going up and down the rungs from the four kingdoms who would eventually cause Israel to suffer, right? The Persians, the Babylonians, then we eventually get to Rome, the Greeks, and then Rome. But that each one of them will eventually be defeated, and that Jacob would prevail. And so it's actually a very interesting comment, because it's saying, right, Jacob at this moment is fearful because he's worried Esau's won, right? He's had to flee home. Esau's won, and he's going to have to go. And it's showing him, not only are you going to be successful, but all your descendants after you, even all their time. And so this is really a midrash that's speaking back to the rabbis where they are, right? Which is in a period of being a minority, of weakness, and it's kind of self-affirming to them that they feel that they're Jacob, right? When the rabbis are writing this midrash, they feel, I'm Jacob. I've had to leave my father's house, and I'm being pursued and wanting to be killed. And this dream is speaking to themselves too, saying, don't worry, I'm with you, and I will once again put you back on top. So it's really, really interesting how the midrash is also reflecting back the exile and the situation of the rabbis. So I'm going to continue here, and we're going to pull it all together a little bit later. This foreshadowed the future when the angels of God, the superpowers, will become very powerful in our world and will begin their decline and end up at the bottom of the rungs of the ladder. The Lord God who stood above the ladder is a symbol of the promise that God will never abandon the Jewish people, as we know from Jeremiah. Even when I utterly destroy all the Gentile nations, I will not destroy you. So in some sense, what they're interpreting the ladder is a sense of God being with you doesn't mean you're not going to go through a hard time. You're going to go through a hard time, and Jacob's about to go through a hard time, but that you will eventually always come up on time. And that's the promise of Jacob and to the Jewish people through the millennia. Right? Very interesting way of interpreting the dream of the ladder. And maybe right, you think about this ladder, and maybe there is something of that in this dream. It's really hard it speaks on so many different letters. So I added this here, Orach Chaim, and then we're going to get to a whole other level. And he dreamed that there was a ladder, inasmuch as many dreams contain matter without significance. The Torah added the word v'hine, and behold, he dreamed, to indicate that in this dream, every detail appeared to Jacob as especially vivid and significant. He had total recall of everything he dreamed, and referred to each detail later on. This is why the word v'hine, and behold, is repeated before every segment of a dream. The Torah thereby characterizes the dream as prophetic revelation, right? There's something special about this dream, and I think he's interpreting a little bit midrashically, but you see in the language.
And that's translated as lo, right? Lo,
and
behold.
lo, behold, or
I wondered
different
about
ways. And it's a way that the Torah's text does emphasize. This isn't just any dream. This is a dream where, behold, there's something powerful happening here. So we're going to do the tour, which gives a little bit of a general view, but I think very interesting. And then we're going to get to a very long Rabbeinu Bachya, who's going to give us the Kabbalistic, and I think we'll pull things together. So someone read for us Tur Ha'aroch. Tur Ha'aroch. The Tur is one of the great halachic commentators. But in this Torah commentary, he's often giving us more of a commentary. It's a super commentary on Rambam, Nachmanides, but he always adds his own stuff too. And his father was the Rosh, who was one of the great early Talmudic commentators. And the Torah ends up being one of the three voices that ends up forming the Shulchan Aruch. The great halachic compendium. We can talk more about this some other time. But anyway, Tur Ha'aroch. He dreamt. Anyone want to read for us? Tur Ha'aroch.
He dreamt, and here in his dream there was a ladder which had been placed on earth, etc. There are numerous allegorical explanations which our sages have offered in explaining the purpose of this phenomenon in Yaakov's dream. Some say the ladder represents Mount Sinai, and that the angels ascending and descending on it symbolize Moses and Aaron. Others believe that the ladder represents an altar and that the angels represent the priests, who in real life ascend and descend from the altar. I believe that the correct explanation is that God showed Yaakov by means of a dream that whatever occurs on earth is engineered by angels carrying out God's will. And though God had known long in advance whatever would come to pass, he showed Yaakov an image purporting the angels telling God that they had now carried out his will. Moreover, he wanted Yaakov to know that although the angels are his messengers carrying out his will, this did not mean that God personally left the earth and the angels to their own devices, but that he took an ongoing interest in the affairs unraveling on earth and was ever ready to intervene when the need would arise. Thus, he assured Yaakov of his ongoing protection on the journey fraught with danger that he had undertaken. In Bereshit Rabbah, we are also told that the angels ascending and descending represented the ascent and subsequent descent of the four superpowers which ruled over the Jewish people in their respective exiles.
So it's interesting, right? God at the top, and this maybe it seems, I think, intuitive. God is saying, I'm present and watching over all of this, right? God at the top of the letter is a sense of God's watching over all of it. God is not detached. There's not just angels and descending, but God's at the top, and God is part of this, part of all of this life. So let's get to Rabbeinu Bachya. Who wants to? This is a long one. David, I think you might enjoy this one. Do you want to read this one?
And here a ladder was standing on the ground. According to the plain meaning of the text, Yaakov observed that the feet of the ladder stood in Beersheba where he was lying. This is the meaning of the word
Standing on the ground, mutsav
standing on the ground, whereas the meaning of the words its head reached heavenwards refers to the temple. This is the gateway from which the angels ascend to heaven or descend to earth. When God appeared to be standing on the top of the ladder, Yaakov realized that the site he was lying on was the gateway to heaven. He's lying on, by the way, on his head, and that it was appropriate place for prayer. The holy temple of the house of God, Yaakov realized that the holy temple was of crucial importance and channeling communication from God to man and vice versa. Again, this is his head. When the author speaks of the plain meaning of the text, I believe he refers to Yaakov subsequently describing what he has seen and what
because he says, Jacob says, right, this is a house to God and a gateway to heaven, and I did not know it. So that's
right,
why they're saying.
And that's and take it physically. He's lying on a rock, which is the name of God, and it's his head that he's feeling this in. Rashi too quotes Bereshit Rabbah, where Rabbi Eliezer in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra describes the bottom of the ladder, standing at Beersheba, the angle being such that the top was vertically above Mount Moriah. When the Midrash spoke about the angle of elevation, these guys are into trigonometry. It meant that at the zenith, the ladder was above Mount Moriah. In other words, the point at which it appeared to reach heaven was directly above where the temple would stand in the future. A Midrashic approach sees the dream as hyperbole of the revelation at Mount Sinai in the future. The word ladder is equated with Mount Sinai. The numerical value of the letters are the same 130. The words are a reference to the Jewish people who would stand at the bottom of the mountain at the time of Revelation. The words are akin to, and the mountain was all aflame, burning up into the heart of heaven. The words are a reference to Moses and Aaron.
Those are the angels. The words Malachei Elohim, the angels of God, are a reference to Moses.
Are a reference to Moses and Aaron, who act as God's messengers. Moses ascended the mountain, seeing that Moses was also reported as descending. He symbolizes both the motion ascribed to the angels of the dream, ascending and descending. When God addressed Yaakov, saying,
I am the God of your father, of Abraham, and so on.
This was equivalent to God saying to the Jewish people at Sinai, I am the Lord thy God. According to Rabbi Eliezer, chapter 35, God showed Yaakov in his dream the four empires who would host Israel in various exiles. The fourth stuff is very important to my mind.
We're going to skip a little bit of this because I just want to get to the other bit. Sorry. Let's see. Okay, just let's continue here. Other midrashim, because he's just going to paraphrase.
Midrashim variously describe the angels Yaakov saw ascending and descending as the angels of Sodom, which had been demoted as their charges had been destroyed, or that they were the angels who accompanied Yaakov while he was in Eretz Yisrael, now taking their leave in order to be replaced by other angels who would guard him while he was in Haran. Other midrashim would describe the angels Yaakov saw and ascending and descending as inquisitive angels who wanted to get a close-up look at the choices of the patriarchs Yaakov, whose likeness was engraved on God's throne. None of these midrashim are mutually exclusive, as the ladder was not narrow, and many angels were able to climb or descend at the same time, each one at his own speed.
Okay, so now we're getting to his rational approach. Now this is the part I want to bring. Okay, go ahead.
A rational approach to the dream. The ladder represents various levels of this universe. The universe may be regarded like a pyramid, with the terrestrial part, the part inhabited by man at the bottom of the pyramid. Above our world is that of the planetary system. Still higher is the world inhabited by the disembodied creatures. In other words, the ladder has three basic rungs, three basic levels. David has characterized the words in a similar manner when he says in Psalms, bless the Lord, his angels. He follows this by saying, bless the Lord, all his hosts, his servants who will do his will. Finally, bless the Lord and all his creatures. Solomon has portrayed the world in a similar way in Song of Songs in 3 consecutive verses. The conventional verses is his cheeks are like beds of spice, producing banks of perfume. His lips are like lilies. They drip following myrrh. His hands are rods of gold, studded with beryl. His legs are like marble pillars, set sockets of fine gold. He is majestic as Lebanon, stately as cedars. The author views Solomon as paraphrasing different parts of the universe and its functions. He uses cheeks, hands, and thighs to describe these 3 levels of the universe. In those verses, the spiritual concept of the Jewish people, known in Talmudic parlance as
Knesset Yisrael, the assembly of Israel. Yeah.
Praises the Lord's and his creation. The cheeks represent the world of angels who tell the prophets which they should prophesy. The hand represents the world of the planetary system. The lips are a reference to the prophets who relate to what they've been told by the angels, source of their information. The word is an actual prophetic message. The word is derived from let your words flow southward. Solomon also compares prophecy as the soul derives similar pleasure from prophecy as it does from spice. By that name, his hand is a reference to the planetary systems. The word giglim, is that right?
Gilgulim, orbiting planets.
The orbiting planets, that's a very key word in Ezekiel's
Kabbalah. Yeah, the
They're
Kabbalah.
compared to hands. All of the man's activities are influenced by these orbiting stars and planets. In fact, everything that goes on in our terrestrial world depends on these planets. But you're not supposed to do astrology because it's against the law. The words filled with beryl is a reference to the stars which form the satellites of many of these planets. The words, what's that word? Tarshish represents something more precious than gold, whereas the planets themselves are in outer space. The stars are perceived as filling some of the void between the Earth and the planets. The word, what's it, pronounce that for me?
No, Me'av Aseshen. I don't know. This is from the Song of Songs. It's hard. It's poetic Hebrew.
Our reference to the 12 horoscopes. This is why Solomon mentions adorned with sapphires, the 12 sapphires. The words are a reference to our terrestrial world. The bottom rung of the material existence, just as the legs of the human being are the lower part of his body. So the part of the universe we live in is the lower end of the entire universe. The word shikon, the 2 elements, fire and wind, whereas the word are reference the other 2 elements, water and earth. Entire universe is portrayed as if it were a ladder.
Okay, so all of that was just the rational approach. Let's go on a little bit more, and then we'll.
That's the rational approach.
Okay, go ahead.
Wow.
Go ahead. Read a little bit more.
These guys are very far advanced if that's the rational approach.
I know, very advanced, right? Okay.
Informed Yaakov in his dream that he stands above this pyramid and oversees all that goes on within.
Beautiful. Yeah.
He mentioned the lower part of the universe first, as it was the part where Yaakov was standing on, which he was therefore closest to his thinking, and which was therefore closest to his thinking. The words "and his head reached to heaven" are a reference to the world of the planetary system who appears to touch the outer frame.
So we'll stop here for a second. I think we'll stop that part here, because he just goes on in this incredible detail about the planetary system. But here I wanted to get now. This is how long is one comment is on this. So let's get to Maimonides, because I want to bring in Maimonides. Maimonides' approach. Go ahead if you don't mind continuing.
Which one? Maimonides' approach to the dream involved the ladder, is that the Torah included the planets in the part of the universe here called the ladder. The words refer to the planetary system being based on Earth, its lower extremity, whereas the words refer to the upper extremity of that part of the universe. The heaven is known as Avrit, as we know from Deuteronomy. Riding through a part of the heavens as a collective name for the entire system known as God's entourage. On this ladder, anyone who wants to is free. Anyone who wants to is free to ascend and descend. So that ladder's for everybody. Which the Torah speaks.
The angels, yeah.
The angels that which the Torah speaks of are the prophets as per Numbers. The meaning obviously being a prophet. The same term is found in Shagai, where the word malech is also referred to the prophet, a mortal human being. When the Torah describes such prophets as ascending the ladder, it tells us that there's a limit to how high a prophet can ascend. Once he has reached his destination, he receives the prophetic instruction God wants to grant him. When the prophets are also described as descending the ladder, that means they are returning and preparing to deliver their respective message. On the other hand, in the 10th chapter, section 2 of this same work, Maimonides writes in a different vein concerning the subject. He first introduces the subject by saying that the planetary system is composed of the 4 basic raw materials which make up the Earth, and all that is part of the terrestrial universe. And as a result, they're exerting their influence on what goes on in the Earth. For example, the moon exerts a gravitational pull on the waters on the Earth current, causing the tides. The sun, which is fire, exerts a powerful pull on the terrestrial element fire. 5 other fixed stars combined exert their influence on the terrestrial element Earth, whereas the moving stars exert their combined influence on the 4th terrestrial.
Yeah. So we'll stop here.
The fire, earth, air, and water of the way they spoke of the fourfold in those days. Now we speak of it as electricity and magnetism, gravity, and the strong nuclear forces. So we also have a fourfold, but we just the names of them.
Interesting how to do it. Well, we could have spent a whole year just studying that one comment by Rabbeinu Bachya because of all the medieval science and metaphysics that he brings to it. But what I think is interesting from it is that he's saying is that Jacob saw what he saw. It's not just a little ladder, but he saw something that was equivalent to the entire universe. He saw something so vast and great and powerful, and I think can really give us one the flash and one Owen's mind. He was seeing a ladder that reached the whole of existence, not just our world or all of worlds. He saw something that conveyed to him the expansiveness of our world and creation, the expansiveness of the spiritual worlds of our worlds. He suddenly had an opening which made him see how small he was, but also how important he was. He wasn't an angel. He had free will within all of it. And the God at the top of all of this was talking to him, little Jacob, and giving him a promise. And so I think that the power of the dream can be looked at in so many different ways. Either as a dream telling him God is with you through all the challenges of life, all the ups and downs of the ladder, right? Essentially, that's what the 4 kingdoms are, and will be with you and the Jewish people. Something that we can keep in our hearts, that God is always with the Jewish people, despite the circumstances we're seeing in the world around us. It can be an imagery for the spiritual life and all of us wanting to ascend the ladder of the spiritual life, always trying to go higher and higher. And it can also be this just incredible vision of the breadth of the universe, of how vast our universe is, all of the planetary worlds, everything included, and that we're just a small speck of dust, but still the divine.
We're not such a small speck of dust. I beg to differ about that. We are coextensive with the universe in our understanding of it and our experience of it.
Our physical nature is like a speck of dust, but our spiritual nature has infinite possibility to it, and to comprehend and to be one with all of it. But whatever, or one that's also interesting is that this was the place of prayer, right? This is perhaps where I want to end, right? This was the site of the future temple. This is the cosmic temple, and this is the place of prayer. So in essence, when we're praying, we're also trying to reach this place of meeting of the ladder. This is the place of prayer. This is the place where we try and open up and have our prayers go up to the heavens. And the temple is not, right, this is why it seems very midrashic to us, right? That was not where the temple was. He's on his way from Beersheba. So this is not the place. That's why they're saying, well, he was transposed to this other place. But it's really telling us that the temple is within ourselves, right? We can be transported to the temple wherever we are, and that the temple is a spiritual place that comes to us when we are in need, and that opens up our vision, that gives us comfort and solace, and that gives us also a vision for where we want to take the rest of our lives. And whatever it was, this was a vision that gave inspiration to Jacob for the many years going forward. And that's a place of this dream, and the place of our vision, and the place of prayer. And that's how we can hold on to all of these different together. There are key moments in our lives where we can have our vision open up, our hearts open up, our depths open up, and that ground us both in the earth and to take us up to the heaven, and that inspire us for all that we need to go ahead.